Hello there, and welcome to Speaking of Our Words, programming that brings you the wide range of voices, stories, and forms of local writers, and offering you some insight into their creative process. My name is Chris DeGuire. I teach creative writing workshops at Columbia College Chicago, and I am your host. We have several guests today, so why don't we just get going? Our first reader today is going to be Louise Boyd. Hello, Louise.
Hello.
Louise, this is your first time on the show. What are you going to be reading to us today?
I'm going to be reading a prologue and a chapter of my book.
Now tell us a little bit about your book, what it's about.
Okay. My name's Louise Boyd, and I'm the author of Journey to the Rainbow. My sister, Amanda Jane Penny, is co-author. Journey to the Rainbow is a sad yet heartfelt story about my daughter who passed away at the tender age of 12 in August 2011. My book describes my journey of grief and all the signs we have received from our daughter in the forms of signs, visions, dreams, communication, energy, smells, sounds, and apparitions. She has helped us with our grief by communicating from her world to ours. So I'm going to read the prologue first and then one of the chapters.
Okay, so Louise Boyd, take it away.
After the rain stopped and my tears finally dried, the sun came out to warm my face. When I looked up, I noticed a beautiful rainbow appearing in the sky. It was at that precise moment I knew that my journey had begun. As I saw Eliana crawl out of the bathroom that day, I started shaking. I could not believe my own eyes. My child crawling on her hands and knees saying, "Help me, help me." Was this some kind of dream I was in? I yelled loudly to my husband, "Something isn't right here, something isn't right." I felt so helpless seeing my precious daughter struggling to get to the living room. My motherly instinct started to kick in, and it was then when I called 911. Since losing Eliana, I have gained so much strength and spiritual insight that it truly has not been not only a turbulent journey, but an enlightened journey, where I'm finding my inner peace and a connectedness to the soul. Love will always remain between my dear daughter and I, because love's stronger than death. We are here to face many tests in our lifetime where emotions and feelings pour out of us like an ongoing waterfall. Sometimes this waterfall continues, but then after a while the flow of the water lessens, but it never actually stops. Sometimes there's a drip here and there of tears that will always flow, but nowadays I can smile despite my tears and carry on with my life to raise the family as best as I can. Our family has experienced many changes that we have had to adapt to since my daughter's passing. But the most important of all is that knowing death is just a transition from this world to the next. Death is just the beginning, and that Eliana is alive. People don't die, only their physical bodies die as the soul lives on. Every time the tree at the school shows its beautiful leaves in the fall, we are reminded of her. I lost something extraordinarily special that day. The angels took her away, but I gained much wisdom and strength through my spiritual journey. I have learned that life is about balance, and we have to face the good and the bad to take these lessons and life experiences by helping others. Growth within us is the reason why such experiences and tragedies happen. Knowing about something is one thing, but actually experiencing it is another. We try to make sense of Eliana in passing, and that her life here was fulfilled in one sense, and that she had to leave for reasons known by the higher powers. So I grew because of experiencing grief firsthand. We learn from these experiences through spiritual knowledge, and we turn the sadness into smiles and wisdom. This void Eliana left behind is filled by spiritual thoughts and prayers, which comforts me and are still helping to heal my family and me today. She was loved and cherished and lived 12 years to the fullest. The zest and energy she put into those years live on still in all those around her today. The tree, the school dedicated to Eliana, bears beautiful red leaves each fall. A reminder to me of her wonderful chestnut red hair. The tree is a poignant reminder as it blossoms and grows, and that life really goes on. There may be life-changing situations, but there is never an end to life. It is just a continuous cycle. Chapter 5, What a Beautiful Sound. The following Sunday morning, Dan made breakfast for us all. When Eliana was here, he always made a special breakfast. Eliana always loved his pancakes, so he decided to continue making her favorite breakfast food. Of course, this took a lot of strength for Dan. It was extremely difficult for us all trying to get through the hours of the day without Eliana, but somehow and from somewhere I felt the strength to continue. I remember that particular morning I was walking around trying to make sense out of my grief-stricken self. It all seemed like one long nightmare. All these mixed emotions and feelings were starting to surface, especially the stage of shock. I remember distinctly telling Dan that I had never felt so numb. I was walking around like a zombie, and I kept thinking, I can't believe Eliana's not here. I can't believe it. I remember going upstairs to her bedroom and sitting there in a daze of numbness and grief. I started looking through her schoolwork and also looking at her Barbie dolls she loved to play with. I then held her favorite purple sweatshirt close to my chest. I said in such a heartbroken voice, Eliana, I wish you were here. I miss you. Why did you have to leave us so soon? I could feel my emotions turn to anger and shouted out, Why? Why did you have to leave us? I don't understand it. The room felt very silent and I sensed emptiness. I wanted her back. The pain was so strong and I felt that my heart was broken into little tiny pieces. After several minutes, my voice then started to soften, and through the tears I said, I wish you were here with us. I feel so very sad and lonely without you. My heart ached desperately for her. It felt so very, very painful. All these mixed emotions running through me, I cannot begin to describe how grief-stricken I had become. Sometime later, Dan came upstairs and placed his hand on my shoulder to tell me breakfast was ready. I told him about how numb I had been feeling and asked how in the world we were going to get through this. Of course, he felt the same way as I felt, and he wasn't able to say much at all. What truly is there to say when both parents have lost a child? He did tell me that we both have Daniel and Jessica to keep us going. Saying these words to me must have been given him tremendous strength and courage, and I know looking back that he was trying to help me in his own special way while also feeling the absolute pain and sadness of losing his daughter. After breakfast, Jessica decided to go to her room and lay down because her tummy hurt, and Daniel went into the living room to play with his army figures. Dan and I were still sat at the table in a devastated silence when all of a sudden we heard the sound of a trumpet playing. In life, Eliana liked to play the trumpet. We both immediately looked at one another in absolute astonishment. Our mouths literally dropped open. I then whispered to Dan, It's Eliana, it's Eliana. I then put my hand to my mouth in disbelief. Oh my word, it's her, it's her. It sounded so far away yet so near. We heard the trumpet very clearly, as if she was practicing in her room. She wasn't playing a particular note, but just practicing some notes. I hurriedly got up from the table and went to ask Daniel if he could hear anything. I said, Daniel, can you hear the sound of the trumpet? He listened and told me he could not hear a thing. Actually, I was unable to hear the sound of the trumpet in the living room also, but as soon as I came back into the kitchen, I could hear her play just a few more seconds, and then the sound stopped. I then rushed upstairs to Jessica's room to ask if she had heard anything. I said, Jessica, did you hear the trumpet? She said she'd heard nothing, and then she quickly placed the comforter over her head. I didn't mean to scare her, and I understand that being only 7, she was unable to process the fact that her sister was in heaven, yet back here playing the trumpet. In fact, even for adults, this is hard to comprehend too. Yet it was very real indeed. The sign was able to lift our heavy heart just a little. I strongly believe today that this was a sign from our daughter, a musical sign that was really meant only for her parents, Dan and I. She could no longer talk to us, however, just playing a few notes gave us the assurance that she is still around us in spirit. It was a small but so vital sign. Signs like these give us hope and comfort to let us know that life goes on.
Louise, boy, thank you very much. That was wonderful. Louise, if you don't mind my asking, can you talk a little bit about the journey that it took to get this story to the page?
Sure. It was just a very heartbreaking story, but I felt like I had to write something. I had to, for my grief. So a little voice inside me told me that I should write something.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I was listening to my inner strength, inner self, my soul.
Mm-hmm.
And it just came about, and I decided to go ahead and write the book.
Yeah. I like how your voice stays engaging throughout the whole piece, but there's also this reflective, all these reflective moments you have in there too, that also keeps this story moving forward. So if you can give us the name of the book again, where we can find it, and I know you said you have a website too, so
yes, I do.
Give us the name of your website as well.
Sure. The name of the book is Journey to the Rainbow, and my name again is Louise Boyd, and the website is journeytotherainbow.net, and it's all one word.
Okay, and can we purchase the book on the website? Or
Yes, you can. Yes.
All right, very good. Well, Louise Boyd, thank you very, very much. You are listening to Speaking of Our Words, and our next reader is going to be Darleen Coleman. Hello, Darleen.
Hi, Chris.
Darleen, what do you have for us today?
I have a short piece of fiction called The Fall.
All right, so Darleen Coleman, take it away.
She strode across the kitchen to let Moses in. Why was that darn cat always on the wrong side of the door? It only took 4 steps to traverse the linoleum, only took the toe of her slipper catching a corner of the rag rug she'd picked up at auction for a song to trip her up. People describe accidents as happening in slow motion, but hers was instantaneous, as if someone had flipped a switch and suddenly she was sprawled like an untrussed chicken across the floor, her chin landing 2 inches from the stove. Shit. She lay there breathing noisily through her mouth, taking stock. Chin and elbow stung, sent waves of pain down her side. Fingers could move. Something about her bottom half wasn't right. A shiver started at her shoulders and worked its way downward. A hot poker wedged itself down the right side of her spine. Damn it. A thought niggled. This is not your average fall. She heard Mo's faint meowing. For such a big cat, he had the tiniest voice. "Mama's coming, baby." She tried to lift her chest by bracing the palms of both hands on the floor, but a wave of nausea washed over her. "Whatever you do, don't throw up, you damn clumsy old bag." "No, wait. Be kind to yourself. This could have happened to anyone, even someone young. Shit happens. Take a minute, collect yourself. You'll be fine. Worst case, you broke a leg. It could be cool to have a cast. Everyone in book club will write witty things, and Dorothy, of course, will draw something funny. Maybe Martina and Rowena will take time out of their important, busy lives and come stay for a bit. No, scratch that thought. Marty will commence with her interminable lecturing on how elderly person ought to conduct her life. No scatter rugs, no electrical cords exposed, as if 67 was elderly. And Ro, she'll start up again about how nice it would be if I moved to Boston, how convenient. Yeah, for her. Not so easy to pick up and move the accumulations of a lifetime. And how could I afford a place there? She probably sees me in some senior housing. Well, I don't want to live with a bunch of old people where I don't know a soul, where everyone talks with accents. Give me a break. Oh, God, I hope I didn't break something. She took a deep breath. She could lift her jaw, move it around. Her elbow didn't sting as much. Lama's breathing. It came back to her from 40 years ago. Nothing wrong with the old brain. Silly to panic. Why, in just a couple more minutes I'll be able to get up and let Moses in. He must be cold out there, poor baby. I'll be sore, but think what a funny story I could spin this into. This can't possibly be as bad as it seems. She wiggled her toes, but it hurt. The pain along her right hip seared. Her cell phone was on top of the dresser. If only she'd brought it to the kitchen table this morning like she usually did. But if the phone was on the kitchen table, she still couldn't reach it. She could try yelling. Of course, she'd have to be louder than the damn opera on public radio. She hated opera. She would have changed the channel by now if she hadn't fallen. "Hey," she croaked, "I've fallen and I can't get up." Jesus, how can you make light of this? This is serious. Scream, damn it. Maybe the neighbors will hear. She screamed till she grew lightheaded. It seemed to make the pain more intense. The last thing I need is to pass out. Stupid fucking neighbors, what are you all, deaf? Fucking rug. Okay, Marty, I shouldn't have bought the rug. Why do you have to be right about everything? Who is the mother here anyway? And why in the hell am I so damn clumsy? She started to cry. She lay there in a pool of tears and snot and looked around. She had a perfect view under the stove. There, amidst a cloud of dust bunnies, was Mo's little felt gray mouse. She inched her fingers forward and teased it out. I ought to clean more often, she thought. She turned her head to get a better view. Yup, there was his ping-pong ball and a curled-up pipe cleaner. What will Moses do without me? Marty's allergic and Ro's a dog person. She teased out the pipe cleaner and another wad of cat hair and dust motes. It's only Tuesday. Marty calls only once a month, and Ro won't call till Sunday. When I don't answer, she won't worry. Neither of them are worriers. They're too busy to sit around and worry. You don't worry till you have kids, and they're too busy to have kids. What's going to happen to me? Surely this can't be the end. This is not a very dignified way to go. When someone finally finds me, it won't be a pretty sight. Please, God, if you get me out of this jam, I promise to be a better person. I swear I'll do Tai Chi for balance. I'll do it every day. I'll go back to yoga class, too, even if that snotty bitch is still teaching it. I'll give up wine and I'll stop buying ice cream and butter. I promise I'll even burn the damn rug, okay? Poor Kitty. She couldn't hear Mo anymore. He must think I've abandoned him. Maybe he went crying at a neighbor's door. Maybe he could do better. Live somewhere where all his toys weren't stuck under appliances. My poor girls will have a lot to do. I wish I could leave them a note. Tell them how much I love them. That I'm sorry. I meant to get things in order, just in case. How I thought I had all the time in the world to do that. She moved the little felt mouse closer to her face. Well, why should I be special? Everybody's got to die, right? It's not up to me to pick the time and place and circumstances. I never would have picked the kitchen floor, for instance. I'm sure there's more idiotic ways to end up. Nothing dignified about death by cancer or slumped over drooling from a stroke, is there? Maybe it's good Moses is on the other side of the door. Well, who knows? Maybe the mail carrier will notice the box overflowing, or the newspaper guy will notice the papers piled up, or Mo's crying will alert a neighbor like Lassie when Timmy fell down the well. The hot pain along her side became a voice rushing past her ears, her mama singing, "Whatever will be, que sera, sera." The linoleum felt as cool as the soft down of her grandmother's featherbed, and in her hand the little felt mouse gathered more dust.
Darleen Coleman, thank you very much. You are listening to Speaking of Our Words, and next up is Walter Gascoigne. Hello, Walter.
Hi, Chris.
Walter, what do you have for us today?
Short story and a poem.
All right, Walter Gascoigne, take it away.
All right, I'll begin with the poem. It's untitled. What awaits the end of day? Are we destined to become dust? Why don't I have a say? Did living make it just another story and a tale? Will there be happiness? How shall I prevail if all around me is darkness? Did I ever exist if I can't exhale my breath from the harshness of skin, cold and pale? Who will be there if I awake from my dreaming state? Will they be real or fake, or what difference does it make? When it's all done, it's still up to fate. The title of the story is The Other Side of Town. On the other side of town live all the dead people. My mom won't let me play with them, even though my best friend died and had to move over there. Back in second grade, me and Jimmy were best buds. We did everything together, like the time we snuck over to Mrs. Grass and peed on her dog, or the time we said we were sleeping at each other's house but actually spent the night in the abandoned house. We hung out together every night in the summer. Our families even became friends. They would sit around the campfire at night, drinking, laughing, and talking until Mom or Dad said it was time to go home. We would have sleepovers. I liked it best at his house because his mom always made pizza, and he had an older sister named Jenny that I thought was really cool. On our first week of summer vacation from fourth grade, me and Jimmy were playing catch with a bunch of other kids from the neighborhood. When Jimmy missed an easy throw and the ball went into the street, he turned and began running after it. I could see the car coming, but Jimmy must have been focused on the ball because he just kept running after it. I tried to yell, but my mouth was like it had cotton candy stuffed in it. Then everything happened like in a movie where time slows down and you see the bullets fly by your head in slow motion. The car never slowed down. Just as Jimmy picked up the ball and turned to hold it up, a smile on his face and a word on his lips that was never uttered, the car hit him and he went sailing through the air. I'll never forget the sound. It was like a baseball bat hitting a wooden pole. He flew about 20 feet before his head came crashing down on the pavement. His eyes were looking right at me. After the funeral and 3-day interment, Jimmy's family decided it would be best if they joined him. His sister wasn't so keen on the idea. She hated how the dead boy smelled, but her parents insisted that they stay a complete family, and they offered her no other choice. So my parents gave them a going-away party. Everyone drank a lot, even Jimmy's sister. I think that's why she kissed me. I didn't want to go with her, I didn't want her to go. I had already lost my best friend, and now I was going to lose the only girl that had ever kissed me besides my mother. After everyone left and the house was empty, I laid in my bed crying, thinking I'll never see Jimmy or his sister again until I fell asleep. The following day, my parents acted as if they'd never met Jimmy or his family. When I persisted that they were still here, they changed the conversation of what we were having for dinner, and if I was going to invite anyone over to come eat with us. Yes, I said, Jimmy. My mother's eyes got really sad, and she whispered, we can never have Jimmy over for dinner again. And my parents walked out of the room, leaving me feel cold and empty. At school, no one mentioned Jimmy. The teacher never called his name for roll call. His desk wasn't even there. I went home and decided that no matter what, I would see Jimmy and his sister again. I knew the only way to do that was to kill myself. They only let dead people enter the other side of town, and no one ever leaves its towering walls that surround it. I put the noose around my neck and smiled, knowing that soon I could see Jimmy again.
Walter Gascoigne, thank you very much. You are listening to Speaking of Our Words. And our next reader is going to be Dave Gourdoux. Hello, Dave.
Hey, Chris.
Dave, what do you have for us today?
I have another excerpt from the novel I've been working on for about the last year or so.
Is there anything that we need to know before we get into this moment, or is it going to be able to speak for itself?
In this scene, the main character and the narrator of the book, Jack Anderson, is home from college on Christmas break, and he stumbles upon a secret.
All right, very good. Dave Gourdoux, take it away.
Okay. I found him tucked away on the top shelf of my mom and dad's closet in an old shoebox with, among other things, a tiny pair of socks and a little pair of one-piece pajamas, a rattle, and a yellow newspaper clipping affixed to a fading sheet of green construction paper. It was from the Racine Journal-Times. The date was April 17th, 1954. Gerald Anderson was the simple headline. It was an obituary. I instantly recognized the name of my paternal grandfather, but then I remembered he died in 1966 when I was 7 years old. This was 12 years earlier, 4 years before I was born. The text beneath the headline began with, Gerald Thomas Anderson was born sleeping on April 14th. He will be forever loved by his parents, William Anderson and Laura Jordan Anderson of Orchard Depot. Then there was a quote from something. For what is to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? At that precise moment I heard car doors slam in the driveway, and I knew Mom and Dad were home. I quickly put the shoebox back where I found it. I made it to the hallway just as I heard the front door opening. Dad's arms were full of brown paper bags filled with groceries. I met him in the living room and took them from him, placing them on the counter in the kitchen. Mom trailed behind with a single bag in her arms. What I could never figure out, Dad started, is why the hell do they have eggnog only at Christmas time? You brought eggnog? I asked. My dad and I both loved eggnog. Yeah, but why only at Christmas time? What if I had a hankering for eggnog in July? And who could blame you, I added. It'd be refreshing any time of year. That's right, he responded. It's so damn refreshing. You guys with your eggnog, Mom chimed in as she started unpacking the bags. Every year I have to listen to this. I'll tell you who's behind it, Dad added. It's that goddamn Pope. It's all part of his whole Christmas racket he's got going. And believe me, he's making millions off of it. Dad didn't affiliate himself with any religion. He just hated the Pope. While his conspiracy theory about the Pope controlling and manipulating global eggnog supplies may have been distracting, my mind was still trying to process what I just stumbled upon in their closet, while looking for wrapping paper to wrap the University of Wisconsin Whitewater sweatshirts and coffee mugs I brought home the day before in my duffel bag. I'd never been told about Gerald, never been told that I was supposed to have an older brother. For what is to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? For some reason, these words from the obituary stuck with me. I couldn't get them out of my head, even as 1,000 questions entered my mind. Did they bury Gerald somewhere? Why and how did he die? Why didn't they ever tell me about him? Why did he die and I lived? So many questions that I decided I wouldn't ask. There had to be a reason they hadn't told me. For what is to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? I tried to imagine, tried to conceive the pain and anguish my mom and dad must have felt. They both seemed inadequate for such a tumultuous event. And then I came along. Was I strictly a replacement for my older brother? Was his death the only reason I was conceived? I've been an only child my entire life, and all the time it was just me and my mom and dad. But now there's another, and as we sat that night and ate dinner, Gerald was there in the empty chair next to me. And I wondered if Mom and Dad could see him. Of course they could. They'd been seeing him for the past 24 years. The question was, what else had been unseen? I thought stupid, trivial things. Things like, would we call him Gerald or Jerry? And if Jerry, should it be Jerry with a G, because that's how they spell Gerald. I thought about what it'd be like to have a big brother, and it occurred to me he'd be 24 years old by now. He'd probably be finished with college and married to a beautiful young wife. In all my visions, he was movie star handsome and endlessly successful. In short, he was everything I wasn't, but that didn't bother him, because he looked out for me. I was home, even if it was just for Christmas break, in the house I grew up in my room, laying in its familiar darkness, sleeping in my bed again. But I wasn't alone. Gerald shared my room with me. It was actually our room now. As I laid awake in the darkness, my eyes could trace the shape of Gerald's bed across the room from me. I could make out the shape of Gerald under his covers. One night, I said softly, just above a whisper, "Good night, Gerald." "Good night, Jack," he replied. "See you in the morning."
Dave Gourdoux, thank you very much. You are listening to Speaking of Our Words, and next up is Jim Janus. Hello, Jim.
Hi, Chris.
Jim, what do you have for us today?
This is a short piece. It's a little excerpt from a couple of years ago when I was participating in a National Novel Writers Month, which mainly the goal is to crank out a lot of material. So this piece could turn into being a standalone short work.
All right, very good. Jim Janus, take it away.
Okay, and I labeled this Mark Gets Canned, but that title could change someday. Today I was fired from the Tronics Corporation. As I write this, I refuse to believe. For 20 years I worked there, started right out of college as an entry-level engineer, worked my way up to senior technician. Tronics, for decades, was a solid, local employer. You've seen their headquarters off the freeway. You're familiar with the brand. In the 60s and 70s, the radios and televisions were in most homes. I was a kid then, and the TVs were all Tronics. I don't believe it, that Linda took my badge, took my laptop, and walked me out, that I can't go back, can't be there with my coworkers. I know every one of them. I'm friends with most of them. 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, for 20 years, and the extra hours. Top management doesn't want me anymore. Not today, not tomorrow, not again. The company needed to make cuts, and I don't figure into their strategy. It's midnight, I can't sleep, and in the morning I'll have nothing to get up for. Yet I write this with a Tronics pen and a Tronics pad. All I could find to get this down, at a desk I bought with Tronics pay and a house I got with a Tronics salary. Before the layoff I thought, I won't get the call. Plenty of others they can cut, the ones who don't do anything. I did a lot, worked on 2 projects. One to limit access to customer information, the other to increase how much customer information the company gathers. My desk phone rang, and it was Linda. She asked me to join a meeting. I got up, walked the long aisle between the cubicles, turned past the bathrooms and the elevator, and got to the meeting room with the nameplate that says, "Welcome." I stepped in, and Linda looked from across the table. Next to her, Barry from HR checked something with his pen. In front of me, the empty chair, a cheap folder with the company logo, an unopened bottle of water, and a tissue poking up from others in a box, with artwork of pheasants lifting away from hunters. I don't remember the meeting. I keep trying, but I can only get back to, I'm running through the parking lot and then across the grass. I scaled the chain-link fence and crossed the street, stopped once only to avoid a car. Then I reached the preserve and ran into the shade of the hundreds of tall trees and their leaves of orange and yellow and red. I glanced down at my dress shoes, the black becoming gray from the limestone dust of the crushed gravel path, and I kept running.
Jim Janus, thank you very much. You are listening to Speaking of Our Words, and next up will be a piece by Richard Bell. Richard Bell, who could not be here today, so we have reading for him, Greg DeGuire. Hello, Greg.
Howdy.
All right, Greg, so as Richard Bell, take it away.
Alrighty, I've read a number of Richard's works, and they've all been amusing. This one is no no different. It's labeled a Thanksgiving wish. Thanksgiving was fast approaching, and Tom Turkey was worried. Every year at this time, one of his friends disappeared, and now there were no other turkeys left but him. Being a clever fellow, he went to the window of the farmhouse one morning and listened carefully. Ma. Hey, Pa, do you want to have turkey for Thanksgiving dinner again this year? Pa. That's fine with me, Ma. Tom was shocked. How could they do this to a nice bird like him? Tom wanted to keep his giblets right where they were, thank you very much. Determined to save himself, he came up with a plan to magically trade bodies with another animal on the farm. According to barnyard tradition, he knew that if he stood in the light of the full moon at midnight at the barn door with a piece of aluminum foil on his head, he could switch bodies with the first animal he saw. But who to trade with? He didn't like the horse much because it was a real nag, so he decided that the horse would take his place at Thanksgiving dinner. Since there would be a full moon that very night, he tricked the horse into meeting him at the doorway at precisely midnight for some sugar cubes. He spent the next hour looking for a good piece of foil in the garbage pile. He found one and spent the next 3 hours trying to flip it onto his head. This wasn't working, so he pressed on the middle part to make it a little curved and tried again. 2 hours later, it landed on his head, and he slowly walked to the barn door. Late that night, Tom was waiting in the shadows for the horse. As he stood there, he smiled, imagining a new life with 4 legs and all the things he'd be able to do with it. Just then at midnight, Mr. Pig walked in. Mr. Horse can't make it, so he asked me to come by and tell you. The pig oinked at him, but it was too late. Tom's mind mystically traded places with that of the pig. Oh, well, he thought it was still better than being a turkey dinner. The turkey, which now had the pig's mind, freaked out and ran in circles, flapping and cursing for half an hour before calming down. Tom, who was now Tom the pig, went to the sty and fell asleep. The next day, Tom was very happy and celebrated by dancing around and singing all morning long, then decided to go listen in the farmer's window again, just to make sure his plan had worked. Ma. Hey, Pa, I reconsidered. What say we have ham this year instead of turkey? That pig's been acting very strange today. Pa. That's fine with me, Ma. There you have it.
Greg DeGuire, thank you very much for standing in for Richard Bell.
Anytime.
All right, so I'm actually going to be the next reader. I'm not always certain if I like following Richard's pieces, but that's just how it works out today. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a novel in progress. I've been reading pieces of it on various shows. What you need to know, this is it's a worst summer job story. For this particular scene, about midway through the book roughly, it is the first day of school in 1999, the day after Labor Day. The story mainly follows the point of view of Jason Collins, who is 17 in his senior year. He lost his older brother Michael in a car accident May of the previous year. And this summer he took a job as a bagger at a grocery store where he met Courtney, whom this piece will follow. Jason's dad, who's also in this scene, is the school's driving instructor. The day before, Jason and Courtney went on their first date and shared a kiss at a Renaissance fair. This particular day, first day of school, has been pretty long. It has started out with assemblies addressing the Columbine shooting and student counseling that's going to be available for anyone. Jason plays on the football team. He didn't play the last year because of his brother's death, and to get him ready for the varsity game on Friday, he's playing in this JV game. And I think that's what you need to know. It only took Courtney a few minutes to get from her locker to the Commons after the dismissal bell. She sat in a corner bench on the east side, hoping to catch Jason before he changed for the game. She wasn't feeling too thrilled to have to watch the game with his dad, though. He's gonna totally remember me, she sing-songed to herself. I know it was last summer. I know his other son was killed. But he can't forget how I destroyed the simulator. He can't forget how Mom almost ran him over after practice. She groaned and covered her face with both hands. Do it for Jason, she thought. Do it for Jason. She dropped her hands and half stood, looking back to see if she could spot Jason. Dozens of kids were about, heading out the doors, hanging out and gossiping, doing whatever it was they did at the end of the day. Shoes clacking and screeching across the tile, all the voices all echoing in her head. Well, maybe it'll be fun, she thought, and hopefully there's some food. She felt pretty hungry. The sky looked clear and blue. Maybe it was 70 degrees, perfect football weather. She glanced across the commons, which was also alive with activity, to the west, where sunlight streamed in, and she saw Jason with his duffel bag hustling down the hall towards the gym and locker rooms. Crap, I'm on the wrong side. She thought about calling out to him, but he'd already rounded the corner and disappeared. She knew he was nervous about the game, nervous about his dad being there and all. Maybe it was better she didn't talk to him now. She sat up and hesitated, rubbing her chin for a second, then got up and went to the east doors to the student parking lot by the stadium. The JV game would be out on the west side, inside the track, and she considered driving her car over to the faculty lot so it would be closer after the game. But then she realized Jason's car would still be over by the stadium, so she decided not to drive over. Now she could walk back over with Jason after the game. And anyways, the line of cars waiting to get out of the lot was pretty backed up. She put her books in her trunk, re-slung her purse over her shoulder, and straightened out her Chicago Bears shirt, wondering if she should grab her sweater. It might get cold by the time the game was over. She found her gray hoodie in the corner of the trunk and draped it over her arm. Instead of going back through the building, she took the long driveway that ran between the school and the practice field, trying to remember if the game started at 4 or 4:15. Either way, she'd have time to kill. The locker rooms were at the far corner of the building, but she continued on past the tennis courts and out towards the track. She hated that track. Even though she liked sports and her brothers all played sports, she couldn't run for shit. She'd played basketball and softball and loved bowling, but running? When they had to run a mile in gym class at the end of last spring, she and two of her friends walked almost the entire way, taking forever. Her teacher told her that if her test scores weren't so good, she would have flunked. Her two friends did flunk and had to take gym over the summer, where all they did was run. She shaded her eyes from the sun as she neared the track and saw only one person. Had to be Jason's dad. The imposing figure paced back and forth near the entrance, wearing what must have been one of a million gray suits he must have owned. She never saw him in anything else that summer. Was he smoking too? Yep. She stopped, adjusted her purse strap again, took a deep breath, and marched on. He looked in her direction and waved, dropping the cigarette and stomping it out on the gravel path that surrounded the outer perimeter. "Hello, Mr. Collins," she said, trying as hard as she could to sound happy, although it wasn't because he was mean or anything. Even though he was going through hell that summer, was still going through hell. She kind of liked his odd sense of humor, how he always seemed to be doing something with his hands, writing on the chalkboard, fiddling with some object in the room. Maybe he shouldn't have taught that summer, taken it off or something. But she knew how work comforted a lot of people. Maybe he needed to teach that summer. He looked bigger, too. Did he put on some weight? His face was pretty scruffy, too. Yeah, he was nice, even when her mom almost ran him over. But he just looked so goddamn intimidating. "Hello, Miss Johnson," he said with a wide smile, his cheeks puffed. Yeah, he remembered. Then she wondered if he knew that her and Jason were possibly, maybe a thing. We're a bit early," he said. She smiled, her mouth closed, not knowing what in the world to say. She clasped her hands in front of her body, her sweater hanging. "You're a Bears fan," he said, pointing at her shirt. His body seemed to be in constant motion. Not dramatic, but his arms swung slightly, and his body twisted a bit. "Yep," she said. No, sir, this wasn't awkward at all. "You know," he said, looking at her and then at the ground, I believe Southport has more Bears fans than Packers fans. She nodded slowly, wanting to go back to her car and die. It's just a hunch, of course, he said, starting slowly for the gate. She followed. When I drive around during football season, I see far more Bears flags and yard decorations than I do Packers. Maybe it's because we're the southernmost city, close to the state line, Or maybe a lot of our residents work in Illinois. I don't know. I've never thought of that. With his back to her, he looked at the lock on the gate. She turned slightly to take in the 7-foot fence that surrounded the entire track and field. Was she going to have to wait out with him till someone showed to open the place up? Just interesting, he mused, digging in his jacket pocket and pulling out a key and putting it in the padlock. Can we just go in? She asked. He turned to her and smiled. I have a key, might as well use it. Not like we're breaking in, right? I work here. I'd like to sit down anyways. He opened the gate and she followed him in. 4 sets of bleachers lined the near side for the home team, while 1 sat across for the visitors. An equipment and concessions shed was at the south end. I wonder when someone's going to get here, he said. I'm hungry. He climbed up one of the center bleachers to the 3rd row and sat down, straightening his tie. Are you hungry? He asked as she sat down about a foot or 2 away, trying not to look like she didn't want to sit too close. She didn't know what to do or say. A little, she said. I should have told Jason to make sure he packed a granola bar or something to eat before the game. Are you guys going out afterwards? To eat? Probably. Well, when they open the shed, I'll treat popcorn. They sat for a few minutes, her looking down at her feet, just feeling horrified. So, did you drive over here? He asked. What? She thought. He passed her class. She had passed his class. He must have known she had her driver's license. Yeah, she answered, feeling a bit defensive. I'm parked by the stadium. He must have sensed her attitude and said, I'm not talking about the simulator. That was just a freak lesson. I knew you'd remember that, she said, looking down at her feet. Well, no one's ever crashed in the simulation and broken the thing at the same time. Kind of a marvel. I do have my license. I mean, it's still broken. She knew he was trying to lighten the mood. Your mom still have her license? Yes, she answered with an uncontrollable single laugh. Have you told Jason that story? No, she said, looking up at him, noticing he was looking down at his own feet, head down, arms resting on his knees, hands clasped. You should. It's funny. I thought I was going to die, she said softly, and then instantly regretted saying that. Could she say words like die in front of him, even jokingly? And maybe he did know her and Jason were maybe a thing. I don't remember you for just that, he said. I mean, I do remember you for that stuff, and you were one of the smartest students in that class. What I do remember you for, now he looked up at her, what I do remember you for is that you were the only one from that class to say you were sorry for Michael's death. That touched me. She smiled a little, and he smiled back. I don't know if the class knew. I'm sure they did, and no one said anything about it. I certainly didn't. But you came up to me after class one day and said you were sorry. She had forgotten that. How could she have forgotten that? I don't mean to intimidate you here, he said. I know you feel awkward. And if I didn't say thank you then, I'm saying it now. Thank you. You're welcome, she said softly, now feeling like crying. This is hard for me, he said, looking up and taking in the field. I haven't been to a school game since then. I'm excited. I was hoping my wife would come. I'm hoping to get her to the varsity game Friday at Case. I'll go with you, she said almost immediately. Thank you. You can certainly ride up with me. Courtney sniffed hard and fumbled in her purse for some Kleenex. All that stuff she'd been feeling about him, how scared she'd been, how she couldn't come up with anything to say, all that just simply vanished. And I'm going to stop right there. All right, so right now I'd like to bring up Lisa Adamowicz Kless from the Kenosha Writers Guild. Hello, Lisa.
Hi.
Lisa, if someone wants to join the Kenosha Writers Guild, what do they need to do?
Well, we meet every second Thursday of the month, and for those we have workshops, in-depth critique sessions, guest speakers, and then we also meet the third Thursday of every month for our main meetings. And for those, you can bring in work and read aloud to the group and just get some feedback on your work. But all of our meetings are free and open to the public, so I would suggest if you're interested, just come on by and join a meeting and check out what we're all about.
And where are the meetings currently held right now?
Right now we're meeting at Carthage College in the Hedberg Library at the lower level there. And all those meetings are at 6:30 p.m.
All right, very good. Well, Lisa, thank you very much. I want to say thank you very much to all of our guests today, Louise Boyd, Darleen Coleman, Walter Gascoigne, Dave Gourdoux, Jim Janus, Richard Bell, Greg DeGuire. If you have any questions or comments or you wish to participate on this program, please visit KenoshaWritersGuild.com and come to one of our meetings and visit our Facebook page, Speaking of Our Words. Thanks to Dave Cole and WGTD, Steve Brown, Nita Hunter, our engineer today, Russ Weller, Lisa Adamowicz Kless, and the Kenosha Writers Guild. This is Chris DeGuire, and the world needs your stories. We will see you again. Thank you.